Oh, okay. There we go. Yeah, that's what I say.
Simon, can I start?
You come.
Yes, we go.
Of course we better. Yes, right.
So pieces of.
All right. I'm going to call the Tipp City Exempted Village Schools Board of Education meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Fox, you can take attendance, please.
Amber Drum,
Yes.
Teresa Dunaway,
Here.
Richard Maines,
Present.
Simon Patry,
Here.
and Zakor. Here. We have a quorum. We can begin the meeting.
We're now at item 1C, approval of agenda. Are there any discussion items anybody wish to discuss or add?
I move we approve.
I need to add something if I could, please, for the treasurer's department.
Okay,
Should that wait for the second or not?
I think, yeah, we need to, I'll second the motion. Now there's the first and second. I'll open it up to discussion. Mr. Maines, you made the motion. Do you have anything you'd like to add?
I yield to Melanie.
Aye. Go ahead.
We have an IRS update, and as a result of the 2019 IRS update, audit, excuse me, we have a agreement that we've had proposed.
Get the item out there.
Okay,
And if they put it on the agenda, then you can talk about the actual item.
okay, well, I can't upload it until it's like IRS update. It's a document that I just want to present during the IRS update, so that's what it is. Just to conclude the audit.
And traditionally what we've done, I don't think we've ever precluded anyone's ability to add anything to the agenda. So I would suggest that we all discuss kind of items we want to add, and then maybe we do one motion to amend to include it all for expediency.
Or we could just wait till the regular board meeting.
We have it, yeah, we have
Time
to 1 week.
Yeah, okay.
Unfortunately. I should have mentioned that.
Anyone else have anything they'd like to add? All right.
I did, but Mr. Benner, mine, in my opinion, could fit underneath upcoming meetings discussion, but it's asking for a change of venue for the April 25th meeting. Do you want that as an action item, or do you want to just talk about that when we go into miscellaneous upcoming meetings?
I think just talking about that is fine with me. All right, so I will move to amend the agenda to add an item 3G, IRS update and recommended action, approval of agreement.
Yes.
Well, second.
Any discussion related to that amended motion? Open for anybody wishing to reference. No further discussion. If you call for the vote, Mrs. Fox.
Patry,
Yes.
Maines,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
and Zakor.
Yes.
Moving on to item 2A, executive session. To adjourn executive session. The recommended action is to adjourn executive session for purposes authorized under Board of Education Policy 0166 and Ohio Revised Code 121.22G4 to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. Is there a motion? By Mrs. Drum, is there a second?
I'll second.
All right, Mrs. Drum and Mr. Maines. Mr. Drum, did you have any discussion? Mr. Maines?
No.
Anyone else have any discussions?
I'm not sure what this is about, but I have not been provided any information or any review. So I don't know what this is about.
Mark, do you want to
Well, I would
explain
say,
it all?
yeah,
briefly?
there's no action, on, there's just gonna be a presentation of information. And so you'll have information that you'll hear tonight, and if you need
To
printed
reference.
copies to review between now and the April meeting, we can do that.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Any other discussion? So are we inviting anybody in? Mr. Satan?
Yes, I'd like to invite Dr. Tuttle Huff, Michelle Bell, and Melanie. And me.
Okay.
And my understanding is there's no action anticipated, correct?
No action immediately following.
All right, so then we have motion second. Any other discussion? All right, so the motion before the board is to adjourn executive session for purposes of authorized under Board of Education Policy 0166 and Ohio Revised Code 121.22G4 to review negotiations or bargaining sessions with public employees concerning their compensation or other terms and conditions of their employment. We anticipate to invite Dr. Tuttle Huff, Ms. Michelle Bell, Ms. Melanie Fox, and Mr. Mark Stefanik to enter an executive session with the board, and no official action is anticipated as a result of the executive session. Can you call the vote, please, Mrs. Fox?
Drum,
Yes.
Maines,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
Motion passes. We now adjourn to executive session. The time is 5:06 p.m.
Guests in the audience, but because of the layout of this building. Front row's available.
You guys can have all day.
We're now-
Right here.
We're now back.
Thank you. Thanks.
We're out of executive session. Executive session is adjourned. We're back to our regular session, time is 6:17 p.m. Next item up for discussion for the meeting is item 3A, proposed schedule change. And presenter is Don Scott. Scott? You have the floor.
Thank you. First of all, thanks for letting us come back tonight and to discuss the proposed schedule change that we brought up last month. We did try to go back to get some of the information that the board members requested and to keep this conversation moving along in order to give, once again, our teachers, our staff members time at the secondary level for 6-12, more consistent time for collaboration in their schedule. So the same schedule proposal is there with an early dismissal on Wednesday, 1:30 at the middle school and 1:40 at the high school. Since last time, we did get a couple pieces of data that was requested by the board members, very good suggestions. First, just the cost of the bus drivers. The bus drivers would be asked to come in 1 additional hour early on Wednesday. I met with Kim Nadolny, our transportation person, and we can determine that the 36 weeks, 1 additional hour per week for each driver will be $14,883 for this year. With the 2% increase, which is pretty standard, it would be a $15,000 additional charge. So that's the additional cost of the bus drivers for that day. We also put out a parent guardian survey. That was a great suggestion by the board. So we did that about a month ago. Yes, thank you. Yes, that was brought up by many board members. What do parents think? And we wanted to go back and ask. So we sent out a survey to parents and guardians for grades 5 through 11, gave them about 10 to 14 days to respond. We had, at the time that I pulled, and I think we're up to 389, but it closed April 4th. But the time we pulled 387 respondents at that point from that survey. 60% of the respondents said they would support the early release. 16% said they would maybe support the early release pending some information, some questions that they had, and 24% of respondents said they would not support early release. Then there was opportunity for comments in the survey. We've attached some of those comments. We quoted some of the comments giving positive support. I won't read those in their entirety to you, but there were also some concerns. We categorized the concerns into 3 major areas. So the 3 major areas of concerns based on the parent feedback and comments. Number 1, preference of late start over early release. That was given to us repeatedly in the comments. And I do want to address it because we also liked that idea as well. I think that was brought by Mrs. Dunaway last time. Could we look into that? I did sit down with Kim Nadolny again to see if we could go to a late start, which was preferred. We know about sleep with teenagers. Unfortunately, due to our conflicting bus routes with LT Ball, we were only able to gain about 26 minutes. So Mrs. Nadolny and I sat down, she had the bus routes out and we really tried. However, because of LT's start time in our primary, we were not able to come to a way to, in order to get at least even 45 to 50 minutes, we had about 25. So that way we were unable to do that, but that was an expressed interest on the part of our families and communities. So we understand that just due to our primary, secondary schedule, we weren't able to make that happen. Another one that I will let our principals address is loss of instructional time. We've also brainstormed ways in order to curtail that amount and reduce the amount of lost instructional time. That was cited more than one time by our parents in the survey. And then our third major area are some concerns about after school supervision, specifically with regard to our middle school level. This was impacting our middle school students more than our high school students due to students who can drive and get home after school. So that's something that I'll let our principals address too. So these are just kind of the 3 major categories of concerns. And I will turn it over to Mrs. Voorhees with some of our ideas and updates from the middle school. I do have a handout.
Can you pass it for you?
I got it.
So one of the
concerns that I'm addressing, and is it okay if I can stay seated? Okay. Were teacher comments, just like, are teachers on board with this? Because sometimes we have great ideas, but maybe the teachers aren't really on board with us. So one of the union member teachers went around and spoke to the teachers. I felt like that they would give a more accurate or more comfortable response about it than for me to go and ask them. So you can see there the bulleted list of all of the replies that they had, everyone that was approached and talked to. I don't know if she hit 100% of the staff, but I know that she hit quite a few of them, had very positive things to say about that, using that hour for the things that are right up the alley of why we wanted to put it in the schedule. So you can take a look at that bulleted list of their responses. And I don't want to cut off your reading, so let me know if I should continue on or give you time. Okay. A second area that of concern or that there were questions on was the if we did a 1 hour early release, what about the student coverage for especially our athletes who would not be going home? Who's covering those while our teachers are in their meetings? And so I will have 4 or 5 aides. It just depends on what's placed in my building for next year. I'll have 1 or 2 counselors depending upon what we have there, and a media specialist. So I would be able to offer any of our students, athletes that need to stay, they can go to our cafeteria and have a study hall tutoring time with those staff members that are available. They could also, if our athletes just need downtime before their athletic events begin or their practices, to have some relaxation in the gymnasium, or with our media specialist being available to have the library open for them to also be able to go in there for reading, for homework, for research. We do now have our Lego wall up, and we are working on a creative space in there that would be available for them. So I feel very confident that at the middle school, we would not have any unattended students who needed to stay before their practices would begin. And then the third area that I'm covering is the what does that look like academic time? If we're taking an hour, if we're lobbing an hour off at the end of the day, that time starts to add up over the course of the school year. However, by reworking the schedule and removing our red devil time, that is very important to us on a normal school day. But if we remove that red devil time, move our lunches into one of our actual academics, our normal periods, our normal academic periods for us at TMS are 45 minutes. So you can see there that we can make those academic times 44 minutes other than that 6th period. And it goes down to their academic time at 39. So on a Wednesday, they would lose 1 minute per period, except for 6th period, and they would lose that 12 minutes or 13 if they're in that B lunch. We could also take a look at perhaps rotating that lunch with period 6, period 7, period 8, so it's not always falling in period 6. It would just be very difficult for us to rotate those morning classes in as well because of our shared staff. We want to make sure we have the correct staff there, our afternoon staff and our morning staff. So the loss of academic time doesn't look nearly as bad as just saying we're taking an hour of academic time.
Right, we'll turn it over. Mr. Barnes will also be sharing more.
I got it.
Sorry, Dan, thank you. He's going to share some schedule ideas.
So the 3 areas I kind of wanted to cover, first of all, to piggyback off of the last one Mrs. Boris talked about, was loss of academic time. So we are reworking the schedule slightly for the high school next year to avoid this giant 5th period that we have for lunches, and we're kind of reworking it into a lunch/homeroom kind of period instead of a giant 5th period. So by cutting that homeroom section, I can get, even with an hour early dismissal, we're losing about 5 minutes per period. So we're going from 49 minutes to 42 minutes or 43 minutes. So loss of instructional time, as I was reading the comments, I think maybe everybody was thinking we'll just lop the last period off, and that's not what we would do. We would rework the schedule so that we're not losing an hour every week out of the same class. So that I'm not as concerned about. So the second part that I wanted to discuss was, and some of the comments were asked, what would that hour look like? And this is just a draft, but this is kind of my vision of how at the high school and coordinating with Mrs. Juarez, what would that look like? So 1 week out of the month, and I'm doing like a 4-week kind of rotation, would be department level meetings. So all the science department gets to meet together, all of the English, math, and so forth. Another week would be course level. So all the Algebra 1 teachers meet just together instead of in a big group with math. So just the Algebra 1 teachers, and we could bring the middle school Algebra 1 teacher over at that time too. The third week, we could do even more vertical meetings with middle school teachers coming over, and we could do that every week. Again, this is just a draft. And then the last one would be cross-curricular meetings if we had that set up. Otherwise, we could add another department meeting, we could add another course specific meeting, or we could have as needed intervention assistance teams meetings, which we don't have nearly as many at the high school as we do at the elementary and at the middle school. We just don't, because by that time, most of them have been caught. But we will have those, so we could have those at that time and not have to pull teachers out during the day, provide a sub and that sort of thing. And if we didn't have cross-curricular or IET meetings, another department level meeting, another grade level meeting, that sort of thing. So last thing I wanted to talk about was a comment or a couple comments I saw in the parent thing about accountability. So the question then becomes, is this just another planning time for teachers? No, it is not. I would be in meetings every Wednesday with a different group. Not that I feel I need to babysit my teachers, because I don't. But that's not an extra planning time for me either. It's a time for collaboration. So being in those department level meetings or in an IET or in a grade level meeting is important to me. And it's important to the teachers. So they need to see that it's important to me as well. So coverage for students is not as big a concern at the high school, because freshmen and sophomores will find a way to go home if they want to before practice. And if they don't, I've got, like Mrs. Juarez says, I have 3-4 aides, I have a librarian, I have counselors. I'd rather the counselors have collaboration time, but they can cover if need be. Okay. And then lastly, my staff is on the clock until 2:50. They don't leave until 2:50. They're still there. And if they've got that hour to work, they're going to work. But I don't feel if it comes to the point where I got to take attendance in meetings and that sort of thing, I will. I don't think, at least with our staffs, that we have to do that. We have professionals that work for us. We're going to treat them like that. I welcome any questions you have.
I appreciate the work that went into this. I can see that from the time you were here last time to now. I really, this really means a lot. And you heard us. You answered our questions, and I appreciate that.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Please, everyone has to ask. Mr. Mays, I saw you raise your hand, but let's ask to be recognized before we just ask questions. Go ahead, Mr. Mays.
On the first handout that we have on the possible Wednesday schedule at Tipp Middle School, it says that periods 1, 2, 3, 4, 7, and 8 will lose 1 minute of instructional time per period. So if that's 6 or 7 minutes per day times 5 days, so we're at around 30 minutes of instructional time gone, plus the 1 hour early.
It's just on Wednesdays.
Just every Wednesday.
It's just on Wednesdays.
Oh, okay.
Yes, sorry.
Okay.
Right. So by reworking the schedule, there's only like a minute coming out of each period because we removed 5th period, which is our red devil period. So instead of students having that study hall, intervention, silent read, those types of things that we put in there around their lunch, we moved their lunch into an actual academic period. That's how we're saving so much academic time. For a
Okay,
Wednesday.
I didn't catch it was just Wednesdays only.
Yeah.
My fault.
Except for that's, okay, this one.
I should have put our normal schedule next to it because it would have made a better comparison for you.
Mr. Barnes, how many times right now, minutes between
Please ask
classes?
to be recognized.
What is the current minutes
Please
between
ask me,
classes?
point of order. You have to ask to be recognized. Mrs. Drum and Mrs. Zakor still haven't had a chance.
Oh.
Mrs. Dunaway, go ahead.
So I'm clearly being treated like a 5-year-old. How many minutes between classes at the high school? 4. Okay, cool. I know we changed that.
Yep.
Yeah, awesome. Thank you.
It would be the same.
Yeah. Gotcha.
Anyone else wish to be recognized?
I do.
No, you go ahead. No, you go. I already went.
Mrs. Zakor?
Mr. Barnes, when you said about your meeting, like the math teachers and then the English teachers and the vertical meetings, and then what did you say that like the last Wednesday of the month would be for the collaboration of the different various departments?
We would have to play that forth week by year to see if we have groups that want to cross collaborate, and maybe the social studies and the English need some time to work on a World War II project across the curriculum. If we don't have that in place necessarily, because it might not be in place right away, we would fill that in with another department meeting or with a course-specific meeting. And that might be important because, you know, I have teachers that teach multiple courses. And if we only have once a month for courses, like let's say an Algebra 1 teacher also teaches geometry, they can only be in one of those meetings at once.
Or you could have a social studies teacher teaching English in the middle school.
Mhm.
So,
Yep.
so I thought, forgive me, I'm sorry, but I thought the initial intent behind all of this was to allow that 1 day a week cross collaboration.
How do you define that, Ms. Zakor? Sorry, what do you mean by cross collaboration between disciplines?
Yes, and also I for some reason I have it in my mind that it was interdisciplinary as well as like with IEPs, 504s, it was quite expansive in that cross collaboration.
And that's one
But
idea.
that model sounds very different now than this model of one, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
One, the first Wednesday, maybe.
Departments.
Yeah, and then, so now I'm not clear.
I think that, oh, I'm sorry.
No, I think it could be used for either. I mean, I think that's why, Mr. Barnes is giving a template of what those weeks could look like, because I think it's just important. We have brainstormed different ways. Cross-curricular is one, IAT intervention is one aspect with MTSS or 504s, that's one. But also with the teaming, one of our goals and something that Mr. Stefanik and our district level administration is really hoping to implement are teacher-based teams, or the notion of professional learning communities. And that really does take place in your grade level specific subject, like the Algebra 1 teachers or the geometry teachers. And that does involve more of those grade level course specific meetings that Mr. Barnes, I think, outlined in week 2. Or within departments where you are consistently looking at student data to drive instruction and making decisions of instructional practices that are working, what's not working, bringing differentiation strategies. So that's one of the keys. That was really, and sorry if I was unclear last time, Ms. Zakor, that was really the driving force behind meeting the time, was more for implementation of our teacher-based teams and professional learning communities that we're hoping to move forward with as a district.
So more cross-pollination among the disciplinaries.
Some,
Disciplines are.
and within the same subject, like I said, whether it's middle school or high school, Algebra 1, getting together and looking at data, geometry, etc. English 10.
Or as needed, I guess.
Or as needed, yeah.
Depending on what's going on for that month.
I'll let you know.
Yes.
You still got the form, Mrs.
Oh,
Cornelius.
thanks. I think, yeah, I'll think of something else, but I'll give it up now.
Mrs. Drum, you haven't had an opportunity. Would you like to ask me?
I was just gonna say, thank you guys for taking all the things we said and going back and getting all this research. I appreciated the survey. I really love that. And then I just want to ask one quick question. I promise I won't. bother you guys anymore. So with your aides that are gonna be covering things, they're already paid with, that's their full day. Okay, just wanted to clarify that, make sure I understood. Okay, I'm great. Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Rance.
On the survey data, it indicates that you asked parents, guardians of students in grades 5 through 11. Why did you not include K through 4?
This early release would only affect our secondary schedule. Our primary schedule would stay as it is. So it's just an early release for 6-12.
Gotcha.
And
Thank
fifth
you.
grade was because of the income.
Sixth graders.
Mhm.
I would like to thank you for all your work. You guys have done a great job. Appreciate it. And I think Mrs. Dunaway had an extra comment. If nobody else has another.
Mr. Stein has his hand up.
Yeah.
All right, Mr. Stefani.
I was just gonna jump in on the Dawn Scott and Zakor conversation about what these early releases are for. It really is something that the secondary teachers haven't had before. So this could grow into any number of type of collaborative team events. So, we could see any of the examples that were mentioned this evening, or some examples that we haven't even thought of yet. So as the teachers get together, they say, well, it'd be profitable to do this, or it'd be profitable to do that, and they could use one of these early releases to do that.
Also, if I could just, one more comment. When you have, say, an Algebra 1, a group of Algebra 1 teachers, you have a group of, at the high school level, of Algebra 1 teachers that Algebra 1 may not be the best example, but an Algebra 1 group, they may have our middle of the road students, they may have our accelerated students, and they may have our struggling students. And they would all have time to meet together to brainstorm ideas and strategies for not just our middle of the road students that are doing well and can be improved, and not just our struggling students. One thing I think we need to work on is our accelerated students. I tell my staff constantly, we don't need more work, we need better work. And that gives them a chance to come up with that sort of thing. True differentiation takes time, and that's what we need.
Mrs. Dunaway.
Did you, either of you have this at your previous district? I was just curious. Did you?
I did.
Mr. Barnes and Ms. Forrest? Yeah, did
We
you
were
have?
at the middle school, and so we were able to build common plan
Okay.
because we were in a teaming environment. So we had 4 core teachers and they were on a team, so they shared the same 125 students all day long. So we could actually fit it in during their school day because of their plan time.
Yeah, I was just wondering, because you're both first year, to our districts. Thank you for stepping up, and thank you for doing a good job. But I was just curious, because sometimes the great thing about getting administrators from other districts is you hope, which typically will happen, they bring the good stuff with them. Like, oh, we did this at our last district, it was, so beneficial, and here's why. So I was just curious as to if this is one of those things that you brought for it doesn't matter, it was just a curiosity question more than anything. Yes, thank you. Leave the bad stuff at the end.
I just have a couple fast hit questions here. What about our bus drivers? Did anybody check with them to see what I got a really great from a parent here on things that I didn't think about. Like what's going on with the bus drivers? How many have commitments in other jobs, prior to that they're like, oh, I can do that?
That I can't answer. I can ask Miss Donnie, and I had several conversations. That one, I don't want to make assumptions, so I want to make sure I talk to her,
Right.
who speaks with the bus drivers. Her main concern was just making sure that they would be paid for their additional hours. She felt like that would be the biggest. Correct. But as far as
availability,
yes, I would want to check
that out.
Correct.
And then there was another one that was really good too, I thought. Oh, how many of this 380 some, how many? 387, how many of those were parents?
All 387.
Oh, those are all.
Oh, yes, those are all parents and guardians.
Oh, I didn't. know
Yes,
that.
yes,
Oh,
yes.
thank
It was
you.
this. Yep.
Okay.
My list was the teacher comments, at least from TMS.
Yeah.
So on the, I should have labeled it TMS, but I think I have a date at the very top of mine.
The one they
Has that bulleted list.
Yeah, just from tonight.
Right.
The handout she gave you.
Yeah, I have that.
That's the teacher comments.
So these
Oh,
are,
these are the teacher comments.
Yes, yeah.
So, but those were all 380 some? I didn't realize that those were all teachers. I thought there were.
No. The 387 respondents, the survey I discussed, that was the parent survey that we
Or
sent out.
parents, excuse me. I'm
Correct.
sorry.
Yeah.
Parents.
Correct.
And were those parents of the middle school and high school?
Yeah, just 5th through 11th grade parents were surveyed. So
Okay.
incoming 6th through 12th.
I'm sorry, you probably said that.
That's okay.
Did you not get your survey?
That's okay. There's a lot of data.
I got my
A
survey.
lot of
I
data.
filled mine out.
A lot of data.
Did you have anything else, Mrs.
No, I
Zephyr?
did not get a survey, by the way.
Check your email.
daughter's a senior. though.
It's probably went to spam.
yeah.
You didn't get one.
Okay.
Just 5th through 11th.
There you go.
Alright.
5 through 11.
Give her a survey. This is gonna smack us up.
No, I'm fine.
All right, anybody else other than Mrs. Zakor? Anything else from our presenters?
We would just like to say thank you again for your consideration, and we do hope, we know that this is different. We do hope that Tipp City Schools can lead the way in Miami County in hopefully moving us forward as a professional learning community. So we appreciate your time tonight.
Thank you very much for your
Thank
time and for being here with us.
Thank you so much.
That'll conclude item 3A. We are now moving on to item 3B, resignations. Recommended action is to recommend approval of the following resignation of classified staff. Gretchen Wilbers, school bus driver, effective April 4th, 2022. Is there a motion?
I'll move that we accept the resignation.
By Mr. Mays, is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Mays, seconded by Ms. Drum. The motion before the board is to recommend approval of the following resignation of Gretchen Wilbers, school bus driver, effective April 4th, 2022. Mr. Mays, do you have any discussion?
No.
Mrs. Drum, do you have any discussion?
No.
Any other board members have any other discussion? Mrs. Dunaway?
Mr. Stefanik, do we know why she resigned? I mean, I don't know if it's not like a person, you know, I mean, are we doing exit surveys? I guess I should start with that.
Yeah, yes,
Okay.
we're doing exit surveys,
Okay.
but this is one where there was a break in service.
Okay.
And then, she decided to retire instead of, or resign instead of coming back.
Okay, because I know bus drivers are, now that COVID's kind of, I don't want to say settled down, but we were having all districts were having a hard time getting bus drivers because of the COVID. Is that kind of leveled out a little bit now that?
We have people in training and
Okay.
getting ready to take their exams and become new bus drivers
Okay,
on our team.
great.
So
Okay, thank you.
that's that, yeah. And we thank Ms. Wilbers for the driving for our district and her service to the district. And wish her well in her future endeavors.
Any other board members have anything else? All right, see no other discussion. Mrs. Fox, if you could call the vote, please.
Maines,
Yes.
Drum,
yes,
Dunaway,
Yes?
Patry,
Yes.
and Zakor.
Yes.
Motion passes. Next item up is item 3C, overnight and or out-of-state trips. Recommended actions to approve of the following overnight and or out-of-state trips. First is the academic quiz team, Mr. Joseph Bellis, National History Bowl and Bee Competition, Arlington, Virginia, from April 21st to April 24th, 2022. Second, Power of the Pen, Mrs. Bridget Hughes and Mrs. Natasha Thompson. It's a state competition from West Columbus, Ohio, May 12th through May 13th, 2022. Is there a motion? I'll move. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved by Mr. Patry and Mrs. Drum. I have no discussion. Mrs. Drum, do you have anything?
Just, was all their paperwork submitted? Are we good on all that? Fantastic, sounds great.
Yes, these are both competition squads, and they've advanced to the level of their competition. So much like sports teams, if you advance to the next level, you
Yes.
go. And so they've advanced to these levels, and in both trips, the teams are small enough that the chaperones are staff. And even for the power of the pen, the parents are going along with the staff member chaperones. So it's everything's in order and ready for them to continue their competing.
Mrs. Dunaway?
Oh, I would just want to say congratulations to the students and to the club advisors. And both of these clubs, I mean, are consistent. They make it this far every single year. So that's impressive. So thanks to all the hard work for the staff and students and the parents for encouraging them to have these kind of interests.
Mr. Mason?
Yes, good luck.
Mrs. Secor?
Oh, no, thank you.
Anyone else? I would also like to say congratulations and good luck. And then Mrs. Fox, please call the vote.
Patrick,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Maines,
Yes,
Zakor.
Yes,
Motion passes. Next item is item 3D, Tipp Middle School tree planting donation. The recommended action is to approve to accept a donation of $903 from Mark Richards for the following item. $903, which consists of 3 trees to be planted at Tippecanoe Middle School. Is there a motion?
I motion to approve and accept the donation.
I second.
Motion by Mrs. Drum, second by Mrs. Zakor. The recommended action for the board is to approve and accept donation of $903 from Mark Richards. The following items, $903 worth of 3 trees to be planted at Tippecanoe Middle School. Is there any discussion, Mrs. Drum?
Good, thank you for the donation and the trees.
Mrs. Zakor?
Thank you for the donation.
Any other board members? I would like to also say thank you, and if there is no other discussion, we're ready for the vote, Mrs. Fox.
Drum,
Yes.
Zakor,
Yes,
Dunaway,
Yes.
Maines,
yes,
and Patrick.
Yes. Next item on the agenda is the Neola Fall and Winter Update Second Read. The recommended actions approve the remaining revised policies and guidelines in volume 40.1 Fall Update and the 40.2 Winter Update. Specifically, it's the second read of the policies that were excluded in the 40.1 Fall Update reviews and is for the following policies. On the Fall Update is policy 0169.1, policy 1617, policy 3217, policy 4217, policy 5630.01, and for the winter update, it's policy 5772 and policy 7217. The fall winter update is attached as a final read. And with the red line. Is there a motion?
I will make the motion that we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
First by Mr. Main, second by Mrs. Drum. The motion before the board is to recommend approve the remaining revised policies and guidelines in the volume 40.1 fall update and 40.2 winter update. The fall winter update is attached as a final read PDF in the public content. Any discussion? All right. Mr. Mays and Mr. Drum, do you have anything? Any other board members so far at this point? I know Mr. Stefanik has asked to be recommended, but you all go with Mr. Stefanik going first. Mr. Stefanik, go ahead.
I was just going to preface the conversation that if you wanted a quick glance at the first of the 17s, which is 16, 17, the weapons policy, there's several accompanying weapons policies that just go from the student section to the classified staff section to the professional staff section. Letters D and E were the ones that raised the concern in those areas. Item D says to permit objects indistinguishable from a firearm used during school safety trainings. That was a concern raised. And then item E, items indistinguishable from a firearm approved by a principal to be part of a class or an individual presentation. And the concern raised there was instead of that permission coming from the principal, maybe the permission needs to come from the superintendent's office. And so those two letters were the items of concern as we move this small batch of policies forward. So if, if the board wants to have a discussion about where the board stands on letters D and E, those are the outstanding items that were still to be approved or included in that group of policies.
All right, go back to the original motion and second, I think it was Mrs. Drum or Mr. Mays?
Main.
Mr. Mays, any questions or comments?
No.
Mrs. Drum? Mrs. Dunaway?
I forget how we left the last meeting, and I can't remember if we got a Friday board update. I'm sorry, it's been a busy month. You were gonna follow up with Norm, right? Or remember you had like a call with him the next day or something?
Yeah. I was
Okay,
just
how did
gonna,
all that work out?
well, I was gonna check with him to see if D is just, it was one of the choices. We either leave it in or we don't.
That was
So
easy,
that
yeah.
doesn't impact anything. And I asked if we took the item principal out and put superintendent, was that enough of a change to make it a non-Neola
Gotcha.
recommended policy? And he said no.
So we can easily fix that on our end and we're good to go. Okay, that's nice.
Yes. And and again, the letter D, it was one of the ones that had a box next to it, and we either check it to keep it included,
Well,
or
that
if
was
we
the
don't
meeting-
check it, it's out.
It wasn't at the meeting we only had 3 board members show up to? I think
Yes.
it was.
Yes.
Yeah, so, yeah, okay, gotcha.
So last meeting at the first reading, what I said, I did some checking, and when I checked with the teachers, the thought was that even those firearms, since they're indistinguishable, if they're part of a training, it raises extra anxiety, especially with the younger students. And there was an anxious time during a training in the recent past. When I checked with the police department said that they don't necessarily have to have a firearm or a look-alike firearm at the trainings, but by having the option there, they could take the training to that level, and then that training helps them as well in their response practice.
But we also discussed that being building level, right? Because we said what you do at the high school isn't necessarily
Right.
what happened at Broadway last time.
Right, exactly.
So, yeah,
Yes. It could determine the age of the student that's involved in that level
Correct.
of training. Sure.
Mrs. Dunaway, do you have anything else?
No.
All right, Mrs. Corey?
Yeah, my thoughts on this is that I would like to see that eliminated altogether, that whole verbiage, objects indistinguishable from a firearm. Whether it's from the superintendent or it's definitely not the principals, but superintendent's a little bit, I just don't see why it needs to be in there, period. And if it should be a situation down the road on a very unique basis for a building, I would think we could come together. I mean, I don't even know why that would be happening, but if that would be happening, first of all, these events are not supposed to be unplanned. Okay, so we know that, the literature, the Alice, these are not unplanned events. These are not just like, hey, next week, I think. No, that's not how they go down. Okay, so if it's going to be planned in advance, and if there is that really special need to have that, then I don't know, maybe you could pull your board together or whatever, but I don't see the value of having this in here. I just do not see the value of it. D, this would be policy.
It's all.
It's what, please?
It's in any one that has a weapon in the
16,
16, 17, 32, 17, all
Well,
the 17.
I'd like to go a step further. I don't even like the ones about theatrical props used in appropriate setting. Because I think that's very open and interpretive. What is a theatrical prop? I'm really kind of surprised at how sort of like, to me, inviting possible troubles into your district. Yeah, theatrical props use. I mean, I understand theatrical props. Okay, we need them. That's not like a big deal. I'm not an anti-gun person whatsoever. I fired guns when I was young on my grandpa's farm. That's not the issue. I just leaving it open like that. Theatrical props used in an appropriate setting. I think that needs to be more defined, clearly defined, as evidenced by, or as cleared by, or as approved by such and such. That's my thought. There needs to be a little more verbiage in there, because, you know, we can think about that Alec Baldwin thing where that's Hollywood and they have some really tight standards and controls out there, but something went very wrong. Something went very wrong. And let's see, what was the other one here? I would just like to see the language of D and E indistinguishable from a during safety. I'd like that removed. That's my view. And that would apply to all 4 of those. Don't we have 4? 4 on the weapons. Oh, and on the starter prop, I also thought it might not be a bad idea to put in there under starter pistols, that would be number H. Used in supporting events, that's all it has. Maybe that should be finished out to say used in supporting events as authorized by the athletic director. Would that provide a little stronger element of checks and balances? This is, if you just look at, well,
It's cheap.
any of these policies I'm looking at.
It's page 5. Oh, I'm sorry, it might be.
Starter pistols
Yeah.
used in appropriate sporting events. Well, that's pretty vague. I mean,
Starter pistol.
that's the.
Oh.
Gets that.
But as authorized by who?
Right.
Who gets to determine that? You know, who gets to determine that? You can bring your tap pistol to the things. I just feel like putting it in there as authorized by the athletic director. Surely he or she would, you know about these events coming up and give the authorization for it. I don't see the harm in having that in there, a little more refined language. That's my thoughts. And then if you want me to tell you about a couple things on the first policy, I know this is our first read on the public participation.
Actually, this is final read on all.
Okay, well, very good then. On the public participation one, I may have missed it in here, but did we inadvertently remove that 30-minute total time limit? Because I'm not seeing it. It's the very first policy on our list. Anybody else see that?
I'm trying to see if it's anywhere else. It's not, there's a per person time up there. And then the next one says during the portion of the meeting designated for public participation, but there's not a maximum time listed there.
But we have in our present policy a maximum cap of 30 minutes, which I think is necessary to put a cap in there. And then as a discussion point,
It's 5 minutes. Right? 5 minutes?
no, that's 5, our present policy is 5 minutes per individual, up to a maximum of 30 minutes for the evening. Yeah. In this policy, I don't see any designation of 30 minutes total. And then secondly, I don't know how did we move from 5 minutes per person to 3 minutes without really having much of a discussion on that. It's in there. Where is that, Heather?
J6.
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 Let me get there.
Oh, there's way at the end. Yeah.
Is that where it says the presiding officer may?
30 minutes.
Says participation of the public is invited shall be limited to 30 minutes unless extended by a vote of the board.
Where is that? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Right at
see
the, all the way at the bottom, right just above the green.
that. Okay,
addition.
thank you. Thank you very much. So really then I guess what's left is that we went from 5 minutes to 3 minutes.
That's not a lot.
And the advantage is 3 minutes, that means you could have 10 people, each speaking 3 minutes, that would fill your 30 minutes. But if you don't have the 30, if you don't have 10 people coming in, let's say you have 2 people, they could speak 5 minutes, which is what we've traditionally done, so. I think it deserves a discussion, Mr. President, that's what I think, before we.
I didn't remember cutting it to 3 minutes. We were talking.
You what? No,
I didn't remember cutting it to 3 minutes.
Did you raise your hand, Melanie?
it's in
Sorry.
Mrs. Zakor, do you have anything else?
here. No.
Well, I think you've already gone once, Mrs. Dunaway. Mrs. Strong, Mr. Mays, did you have anything?
No,
Or am I on the wrong item? Let me make sure, I'm sorry.
Doesn't matter.
Well, it does matter, hold on a second. I've got you, you can put your hand out, I'll let you go.
Keep it up, it's not pressure.
Yeah. Well, go ahead, Mrs. Dunaway.
I think 3 minutes is really short, because sometimes, if people come to a board meeting, they're taking time out of their life, they're leaving work early, or they're leaving, making dinner, or there's a kid's sporting event. If they come to this board room, they have something to say, and they deserve our time. That's what we're here for. By the time you barely get yourself rolling, 3 minutes is pretty short, because if you're coming here, you're clearly passionate about whatever you're here to say. So I think 3 minutes is a disgrace. I think it should be 5. That's my 2 cents.
Mrs. Strong, Mr. Mays,
who suggested the 3 minutes?
I don't know.
I think that was I think it was a Neola suggestion.
You
Did you?
didn't raise your hand.
Mr. Mays, did you have any other questions?
No,
Mr. Stefanik, if you wish to provide feedback on any questions, just don't ever hesitate.
I just, that based on it being in green and underlined, that came as a Neola suggestion from Norm. So I don't know if that came because public participations across the state have
I think you
increased.
said something
More
like
people
that.
are coming in, and so they try to get
Hey,
more,
you didn't raise your hand.
they give more people a chance to talk or what.
All right, Mrs. Drum, you have not yet had an opportunity to speak. Did you want to speak?
I was just gonna say, I do remember something like that being said at the Neola meeting. When we talked about it, that there's lots more participation, so they were trying to cut down on the amount of talking.
Did you have anything else, Mrs. Drum?
That is all I have to say.
I would say that there have been meetings when we have a significant amount of participation where we have more than 10 people and then they'd like to and they can't. I think having a 3-minute limitation allows people the opportunity to come in when we have something so that everybody can be heard. I understand that might limit some people to 3 versus 5 minutes, but it also offers to provide the board with differing viewpoints that may not be heard otherwise. The policy also allows the president to withdraw that strict application. So if we only have one person, we can certainly give them 5 minutes. The board can do that. I'd rather have the ability to limit it when we have a lot of people there that way. And it's a lot easier to extend somebody's time from time to time than it is to limit it when it's a contentious issue. And Mrs. Dunaway.
So Rick, I wanted to answer your question and Amber already answered it, but we did receive, you were on the board last fall. We received, those emails that we get from OSPA.
Yeah.
One of them was about this, and because of the increased participation at board meetings, because there were a lot of hot topics last year, that it just across the state, they thought this would be a good idea. And every local board has the ability to do what they want. So to me, we're not being very transparent. So we're saying, hey, you're coming in here, you're upset, but we don't want to hear you. So you only get 3 minutes. The last 2 years have been because of COVID and a couple other issues at the board. We closed open enrollment for the first time in many years. So that got a lot of people coming in here. why are we afraid? If somebody comes in here and they're upset about something, they have a right to tell us.
Mm.
And we have a right to sit here and take it like the previous board did for 2 years.
Right.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I'm not gonna say, sorry, Mrs., Smith, sit down, your 3 minutes is up. Mrs. Smith has every right to tell us why she's ticked off. I want to hear from Mrs. Smith because maybe it's something that will get the 5 of us, the 7 of us to say, oh my gosh, we didn't think of that.
Mm.
We didn't think about what it looks like from the other side. I never want to tell people they can't have 5 minutes to take time out of their schedule to come in here and address the board. That is nonsense.
Mhm.
That's absolute nonsense. It's not transparent at all. And it's disrespectful to our community. Disrespectful.
Okay, I'm not arguing, I just
Yeah.
asking.
No, I wasn't
Yeah, I'd like to
arguing
be
either.
recognized, Mr. Mansell.
Okay.
If you wish to be recognized,
Yes.
Mr. Mansell.
Yeah, I see what you're saying too, but am I incorrect that, Simon, you have the ability to extend it, as you said? If they wanted, if there was, enough room?
So, point of information, I believe that the policy does provide either the board or the presiding officer to modify the procedure. And I don't recall exact language, but the board always can act together as a whole to do something, including extend those things. You have to be careful related to creating a subjective standard. But so the answer is yes, there is something in the policy that addresses that. I don't recall exactly how it is stated. And then Mrs. Dunaway, you had your hand up, and then you have your hand up, Mrs. Zakor.
So Rick, in the past, what happened, we had citizens come in and it was clear. So I just said, hey, we've got, obviously, we've got a lot of people here. Is the board okay with extending time? And it was always a yes.
Okay.
Yeah, but 3 minutes is very short. By the time you come in, give your name and address, heck, you barely get to the subject matter of your passion of why you came.
Mhm.
Mrs. Zakor.
Yeah, I have a proposed solution. So we get the best of both. I totally agree. The 5 minutes, I think should be there. We don't typically have more than 6 people speaking at once. It can happen, obviously, but typically we don't have that. So that 5 minutes allows, the people that live here and pay these taxes to come in and be heard. I'm all for that. Don't always like what they have to say to me, but I'm all for it. Okay, so, but another thing we could do though, is to the point where we have 8 people, 9 people, everybody wants a bite of the apple. We could write this to say that each statement made by a participant shall be limited to 5 minutes duration unless we have greater than 6 people. Greater than 6 people, which therefore then we would reduce it to 3 minutes per person for a total of 30. That way, if you have 5 people coming in, that each one gets 5 minutes, you don't exceed 30 minutes. You have 6 people coming in, they each get 5 minutes, you don't exceed 30 minutes. You have 8 people coming in, we're gonna exceed 30 minutes, so then greater than 6, which would be 7, we can say it bumps down to 3 minutes. Just a thought.
Is that
Okay.
all, Mrs.?
Yes.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead, Mrs. Drum.
Okay, so unless I'm confused, because I thought that we talked about this before, the portion of the meeting during which participations of the public is invited should be limited to 30 minutes. So that means they have 30 minutes no matter what. It doesn't matter how many people are here, that we could just divide it. That's the way I've understood it when they were explaining it to me.
So is that your question, comment?
Yes, it's my question / comment.
Okay, so everybody's spoken twice except for myself right now, and I will say 2 things. The first thing is that item F says that there's 2 sections that this is talked about. Item F talks about the each statement by the participant shall be limited to, it was 5 minutes. Neola has suggested 3 minutes. Neola, of course, is the service that we pay for to provide us recommendations based on trends and changes to the law, et cetera. And so they recommend that change it from 5 to 3. It sounds like based on our discussion today that there's a lot of thought related to revising this. We have a limited amount of time during this work session. I have not heard any motions to amend these policies from anyone, and it sounds like if we're going to be amending these policies, it's going to be maybe a little difficult. My thought would be for the board to consider just moving to table this matter till the next meeting to give the opportunity to the policy committee, which consists of Mrs. Drum and Mrs. Zakor, to come back with some proposed language that may address their concerns or the concerns reflected by the board. And for another first read as it's revised at the April 25th meeting, I think, is that April? Did I say that right? Yes. And then we could have a second read at the work session after that. If that makes sense to anybody, I'd entertain a motion for that.
I will make that motion.
The motion to move this into our committee to come up with some proposed language for us to consider at our next meeting. Is there a second? I will second that motion. Is it the current motion for the board is to move to table this to direct it to the committee rather to prepare proposed amendments and for our consideration at the April 25th meeting. It's currently for the board. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing no discussion, the present motion for the board is to move these policies to direct them to the committee for proposed amendments for the April 25th meeting for a first read and a second read at the meeting that follows, the work session that follows that meeting. Mrs. Fox, if you can call the vote, please.
Okay, and we had Maines first and then Patry.
Yes.
Maines,
Yes.
Patry,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Zakor.
Yes.
All right, motion passes. Before we move, I'd like to thank the committee for accepting that responsibility. Item 3F is the fiscal year 21 audit manager's request for additional information. Approval authorizing, the recommended action is approval authorizing President Simon Patrick to request from the administration and school district's attorneys information, documents, notes, internal messages, text, billing records, electronic stored information, work product here and after collected, we refer to as documents that could be or is subject to confidentiality and privilege under executive session and attorney-client privilege. And 2, to share the same to the state of Ohio's audit manager as it concerns and is in any way related to the following. Sub-item Roman numeral 1, executive session of February 10th, 2020. Roman numeral 2, attorney-client privilege email of September 21st, 2020. Roman numeral 3, attorney-client privilege email of October 15th, 2020. Roman numeral 4, Board of Education members directing, requesting, or authorizing that an attorney from Russell and Anderson, a legal professional association, attend an executive session. The subject matter of which was to discuss complaints of certain Board of Education members against Simon Patrick, to which attorney Helen Carroll attended. And Roman numeral 5, Board of Education members directing, requesting, or authorizing that attorneys at Russell and Anderson, a legal professional association, look into and provide an opinion to the school district's obligations as it relates to the Tipp City Public Library trustee appointments. Is there a motion?
I will motion that we approve.
Is there a second?
Second.
Motion by Mr. Maines, second by Drum. Is there any discussion? Mr. Maines,
No.
Mrs. Drum,
Mm-hmm.
other board members? Mrs. Dunaway?
So, Rick, I had a question. One of the items in here is the September 21st email. Do you even know what that is?
No, I don't.
So how can you approve something if you don't know what it is?
All right, please do not address your comments to the individual board members. That's not appropriate under Robert's rules. If you want to make comments or ask general questions of procedure or information clarifying the motions, please do so, but don't ask questions directly of the board members, please.
But Simon, we've been doing it for 2 years.
Exactly.
And you did it.
You do not have the
Today.
floor, Mrs. Zipporah. Mrs. Dunaway still has the floor.
There is some informality here.
Mrs.
You haven't
Dunaway still has,
changed that.
Mrs. Dunaway still has the
Fine.
floor. Mrs. Dunaway.
Okay, so following up, what, I guess another question is, another one on here is item 3, October 15. Or do you have any knowledge of anything, what that is?
Again, please don't direct questions.
So
directly
Rick's trying to
board
answer.
members.
He has the right to answer if he wants.
My motion was to approve authorizing President Simon Patry to request this information.
Okay,
I have no idea what it is.
sure, okay. So I guess, so then I have a question for you, Simon. So you're perfectly okay with this board setting the dangerous precedent of waiving FERPA, student FERPA information and HIPAA? That is a very dangerous precedent. Because I was on the board and I know what these emails are. And every parent in this district should be very concerned because I'm here for students. I'm not here for a personal agenda. I'm not co-counsel for TCC Action LLC. It's not lost on me that these items are part of TCC Action lawsuit. So I guess, are you a board member or do you work for TCC Action? And is this all you need? Or are we just gonna keep going through this until the recall is over? Are you gonna keep coming back every month with more stuff that TCC Action needs? Because let's just get it all over today. We're supposed to be here working for students. I'm looking at our list of stuff that we're supposed to be working on. Staff onboarding seems very critical and important. Continuous education for staff, we've been having that discussion for years. That should be an unlimited conversation. Facilities, we've talked about that. We are springing on our taxpayers that we need $600,000 for bleachers, bullying parameters, technology services, kindergarten registration didn't work, superintendent goals with OSAS timelines. All of these things we're supposed to be working on. And you, as Corinne Dowell stated very well last fall, you have turned our boardroom into a courtroom. This is nonsense. This is absolute nonsense. What the heck? Are we here to be legal counsel for TCC Action or are we here to work for students? It's a pretty simple decision. We can't do both.
Anything else, Mrs. Dunaway?
Well, it's just disgusting, that's all.
Mrs. Secor?
Yes, I have a lot to say, thank you. I have a copy of the fraud risk assessment questionnaire that you completed, Mr. Patry, and the board voted for you to complete that. And you did it very deceptively. And you have no right to speak on the behalf of this board with this government document. You came in and you asked this board permission to complete what was viewed at the time as just sort of a routine standard form. You gave no indication whatsoever that you were going to mention 2 board members on this form and repeatedly state that it's your opinion that they are engaging in fraud. Your opinion that they're engaging in fraud. So I don't know if Mrs. Drum is sanctioning this. I don't know if Mr. Maines is sanctioning this because they voted for you to fill this out. So I'm not sure what it is that they are endorsing. Are they endorsing their beliefs that we've engaged in fraud, even though they weren't here for any of these meetings or they weren't on the board at the time? I think it was very underhanded of you to take this form with unanimous vote, believing that you were just going to fill this out in a non-specific manner because there was no board discussion that we believe there was fraud going on as it is defined in this form in terms of embezzling cash, causing an entity pay for goods or services not received, using an entity's assets for personal use. It was insulting and it needs to stop. You don't speak for the behalf of the board. You're one individual member. And the bad boardsmanship, if you really believe those things, then it should have been brought before this public, before every board member for a discussion. And then with a decision based on a majority vote. You don't get to make this up as you go. Now, A Board of Education constituents' personal agenda is not the same as the agenda that results from the political process enacted by the Board of Education. Those are your words, Mr. Patrick. This is especially problematic when a Board of Education members are split into factions and that members of the board could unwittingly act in an unlawful and contrary manner to the interest of the board. I am really concerned that we had, if there are board members on here that are going to endorse this, I'm very concerned for multiple levels. Number one, there's 2 board members on here that really don't know what this is about. They don't have the information. They were not present at the meetings. I'm not sure about what some of this is about. I asked you, Mr. Patrick, before coming to this board meeting to give the specific date of the executive session you're referencing. You chose to ignore me. And that's important. The subject matter, which was to discuss complaints of certain Board of Education members against Simon Patrick, and to which attorney Helen Carroll attended. I don't know what executive session you're referring to, and it's not secretive. If you put it on here, then tell us what the executive session is. So for 2 board members that weren't even a part of this to sanction this should alarm our community, and I'll tell you why. Because we have confidentiality issues. It's not our decision to waive as a board. We could all 5 unanimously vote to waive somebody's student records. That doesn't mean we're allowed to do it. That doesn't mean that we're not going to get in trouble if we do it. There's a higher level of protection for that confidentiality, and it doesn't rest with this board.
That's right.
Secondly, I believe you acted in contrary to the interests of this board. You just pulled a fire alarm with the auditor's office based on your opinions. I think anybody that works in a district, there's a lot of people that have opinions about what you do as an employee. But having an opinion about what you do and having some real basis of evidence and dialogue to that is an entirely different story. And thank goodness our judicial system doesn't run on just opinions. You have to have some probable cause and evidence there. And for you to pull that fire alarm without the consultation of this board, especially given that 2 board members weren't even here during this period, is alarming to me. It's very alarming to me. And then the final thing I want to say about this, the way this is written, approval authorizing the president. I don't feel that this should be approved, period. But it especially shouldn't be written to approval authorizing the president to. Again, this would be a board directed decision. I'm very disappointed, Mr. Patrick. For 2 years, you have said to this community that no individual acts alone. And yet I feel like that's exactly what you're demonstrating here.
Thank you, Mrs. Core. Mrs. Crown, did you have anything?
Yeah, I just wanted to say I opened this up for discussion because I wanted to be able to hear everyone's thoughts on things. So that is the reason
But you're right.
I seconded. Yes.
All right. Thank you, Mrs. Crown. So, and Mr. Mays, did you have anything you wish to say?
No.
So the fraud request assessment questionnaire was directed to this board, and I related to the board without answering it because I was unsure of, number one, my legal obligation to answer it, and number 2, I felt I did not have the authority to do it. I did that because I knew that if I were to fill that out and sign it or present it as it's coming from me, that I would include a lot of information that we're going to displease some of these board members. And the subject matter of which I've frequently brought up at board meetings. And ironically, or some of the arguments made today are, kind of the issue, but they're trying to somehow be reversed, which doesn't make any sense to me. So that was sent over to the county prosecutor's office, who's our statutory counsel, for evaluation, and it was recommended that I do fill it out. That was approved by the board. The subject matter in that questionnaire included times that where a board member would have used, or anyone in the school district would have used assets of the school district in relation to their interests versus the school board or outside of the authorization. When I filled that out and I identified those issues, I was very, very explicit in the fact that I held a minority view of what I was bringing up. I included outlining the positions of the other board members, including the majority at the time, that what I was bringing up was not an issue to them. And that I was bringing it up because I felt it was an issue and I'm the one filling it out. I don't think I could have been any more objective or neutral in that presentation and more blatant in qualifying that this was not a shared view of the board. And that way the auditor could then look at what I've presented and determine whether they felt that that was something they needed to look into. That resulted in the auditor sending me an email asking me to provide information that I don't believe I have the authority to provide. I do believe that information is extremely important. I do believe that it shows what I believe is unlawful action of board members acting individually and not as a board to authorize various services on behalf of the school district that the school district paid for without board authority, and at times in contravention of express authority that were limiting certain actions. And so I think that's extremely important. It was indicated that this is, we shouldn't set a dangerous precedent of waiving privilege and confidentiality. Well, this board did just that when it cherry picked an email last year that served the majority faction at the time. Further, it's indicated that it was inferred rather that, or implied that I'm co-counsel for the citizens group. I am not an attorney for that citizens group. I clearly have a conflict of interest. I'm not involved in their case beyond having been contacted by various people that are upset about things and indicating that I don't have authority to provide any information. I don't have the authority to provide any confidential information alone. I don't have the authority to provide any privileged information alone. And I simply relay everybody back to the public meetings where I noted my concerns, and that's where I have them. And they need information, they're going to have to get a court order, or the board has to approve it. So I'm not co-counsel for the whatever they're called that has filed a lawsuit against certain board members that are present. But I fully support their mission, because I think it absolutely support it. So I don't speak on behalf of the board, and I can't fill that out, and I can't provide the information that's been requested by the state of Ohio's audit manager. And so when they requested the information, I forwarded all those emails. I included also, I forwarded the fraud request assessment questionnaire to all board members immediately upon submitting it to the auditor. I'm not trying to hide anything here. I'm being very transparent. And so if anything, if the community should be alarmed, it should be alarmed that this board doesn't provide information that's requested by the auditor. It should be alarmed that certain board members are trying to conceal the information that would reveal what I think is very important to the state of Ohio's understanding of what has occurred here by some of the board members. And it's my opinion that they've acted contrary to this board's interest, the school district's interest, and in contravention of our bylaws, our policies, and Ohio law. And so I have no disappointment and request that this board is transparent, satisfy the request that's been made by the state of Ohio's audit manager in our fiscal year 2021 audit. Anyone else? Mrs. Dunaway?
I mean, let's just go to the chase, Simon. Items 1, 2, and 3, executive session, February 10th, 2020, the privileged email from September 21st and October 15th. You have been shouting this from the rooftops since you've been a board member. The issue is we are a board. Sometimes we're 4-1, sometimes we're 5-0, sometimes we're 3-2. But you have never been able to accept the majority of the board's decision. You just like have a petulant 2-year-old hissy fit every single time. We have talked about these issues over and over and over with legal counsel Helen Carroll, with people from Ohio School Board Association. Mr. Stefanik has weighed in. You just cannot let go of your personal agenda on these 3 issues. And the ironic one to me is February 10th, 2020. Why didn't you bring this up when Dr. Kumpf was still here? Why didn't you bring this up when Corinne Dahl was still here? Why did you wait so long? You purposefully waited for those 2 to leave the board. I am the board member that was here when all of that got started. I'm the only remaining person. Mark, Melanie, Rick, Amber, yourself, and none of you were here. If you were that concerned about it, you should have handled this when Corinne was still here and Dr. Kumpf was still here. This would be very simple to clear up. Instead, you've been grandstanding and showboating for 28 months now. And what has it accomplished? The stress that it puts on the people that work in the central office. Brad Bush can't even do his technology duties, kindergarten registration, power school, the list is this long because he's working on public records requests all day long. It's a Russia witch hunt. When does it end? When does it end? I mean, so then now what's going to happen? We're going to have more board members come back next month, and I'm going to have a whole list. I would like to make an amendment tonight. I want to waive executive session from July 21st, 2020. That's just off the top of my head. I'm sure I'm going to go home and think of 6, 8, or 10 more, but that's not. What's the benefit? It's a he said, she said. And to be perfectly honest, because you're all about transparency, all of this stuff has already been on social media. Out of the 5 board members, Rick and Amber weren't here, the 3 of us, Joelle and Heatherly and Corinne Dahl, there is a leak on the school board. When you go to an executive session and 2 days later, you read stuff on the Tipp City parents page that came from executive session, where is that information coming from? It certainly wasn't Mrs. Zucor, myself, or Mrs. Dahl, because the information was always untruthful and made the 3 of us look like we were doing something that we weren't. So that would only leave 2 people. You can't lie. Once it's on social media, it's there. People read it, people saw it. The witch hunt needs to end. It's just gotten way out of control.
Thank you, Mrs. Dunaway. Mrs. Zakor?
Yes. It was stated by a new board member that they liked what happened to having fun at board meetings. We are constantly being attacked. And when the information is being manipulated, there is a distinct difference between proactive aggression and reactive. We had a new board form just 3 months ago and an opportunity to act like a board, and you have the opportunity to act like a presiding officer for the interest of your board. Not for your interest, but for the board's interest. The fact that you filled out this form and you made a statement that you submitted the fraud risk assessment questionnaire to all the members. Yes, you did, sir, but it was blank. It was a blank questionnaire. Maybe it's the generation I was raised in. You ask a straight question, you give a straight answer. That's what my father drilled into me. And I don't like manipulative dialogues. Yes, that form was presented to all of us blank. And when we came together, the 5 of us, 5-0, voted to allow our presiding officer to fill that out. There was no indication whatsoever from any of us that it was going to be filled out by one individual with one individual's opining perspective that there's been fraud by 2 or more members. Come on, the common sense of that. If that is what was proposed at this meeting, you think I would say, duh, I'm so stupid, I'm going to vote for that. That sounds like a good idea. This is bullying. It is harassing, it is manipulating, and frankly, I think it's fraud to take a government document like this and use your opinions and manipulate it when this board had no clue, no heads up, no discussion, no approval of that. Shame on you, Mr. Patrick. You're better than that. That's low. And now moving forward, I would recommend that you retract that document. And furthermore, I would recommend to this board tonight, Mr. Patrick is not our legal counsel. We have legal counsel for this. And you are getting into a slippery slope. If you get a majority vote to authorize things to start getting released to the auditor's office, and you don't even know what the heck you're releasing, I won't be a part of that. Anybody else wants to vote and put their license or their oath in jeopardy, fine. But I know firsthand that some of this does involve students. Oh, yeah, it sure does. And I'm not going to release that confidentiality of their federally protected right to have that. I hope people start to put on their common sense cap and start looking at things for what they really are. February 2020, and here we are 2 years later, and now this got a revival because we have a new president who unilaterally acted to pull a fire alarm in front of the state auditor's office, and I think it's shameful. And I would hope this board can come together to show that we do have some class and intelligence, and we are going to strive to work together to improve things and to respect each other. And when we have disagreements, we will do it in an honest, open, candid, and respectful manner, and not an underhanded, deceitful manner. That's all I have to say.
I would like to make an amendment to add the July 17th, 2020 executive session. That's just one I came up with the top of my head. Sure, I'll think of more. You had an amendment.
I amend that you not approve this. I won't.
Your amendment came first.
My vote will not. No, I'm not gonna
Your amendment
thumb
was
my
first.
nose up at federal law.
I'll second your amendment.
That's suicide.
So who's got a motion and what is it?
Anne had one.
Mrs. Zakor, what is your motion?
My motion would be to retract this authorization. To retract the voting of this authorization.
So right now you have the ability to amend this motion. You're amending the motion to essentially start from scratch. And that it's to retract what authorization specifically?
This is, if I understand this correctly, it's a recommended action, approval, authorizing, etc. And my amended motion would be to recommend.
You originally said approval authorizing President Simon Patrick. You said legal counsel or the board.
No, I said,
what you
even
said
if
a while
I said
ago.
no, that was one point, but even if you had to go to that, I will not vote to release confidential information that I have no right to do that. I have no right to release a student's or family's confidential information. I have no right to do that.
Right.
And I'm not gonna get sucked into that and involved with that one bit. So this whole thing needs to be scrapped. And what would my motion be, Mr. Patrick? I'm not quite sure how I would word that. I'm open to some suggestions.
Turn over to legal counsel.
So there's no motion for Mrs. Zakor. Is there a motion by Mrs. Dunaway to amend this motion?
No,
Okay,
I'm gonna come back with the whole list.
so Mr. Maines.
May I make a motion to table this?
So you can motion anything.
That's my motion to table this till our next meeting.
Is there a second? Mr. Maines' motion to table this motion until the next meeting, which is April 25th.
I'll second.
Motion by Mr. Main, second by Mrs. Dunaway. Is there any discussion for present motion before the board by Mr. Mains and second by Mrs. Dunaway? Is to table the present item 3F until the next April 25th meeting. Is there any discussion? All right, hearing none, Mrs. Fox, please call the vote.
Mains,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Patrick,
Yes.
Zakor.
No.
Motion passes. Item 3F is tabled until next meeting in April 25th. Item 3G. IRS update, recommended action. Any discussion? We'll start with the discussion. Mrs. Fox?
Okay. I've been working with the 2019 IRS audit, and we, Friday afternoon, pretty much got the determination, and see in there the content that I added. Classification and settlement program. So this is just an option to go ahead and pay 50% of the total fee that would be at a normal rate. If we were treating them as, had we treated them as payroll, and we have roughly 8 people or about $3,060, which I think is on page. And this is a sample, so we're not signing this, Mr. Patry, this evening or anyone. This is a sample of what the official document's gonna look like. So it looks to me that I just have to approve whether we're gonna, so we sign an agreement with the IRS, which wasn't, I wasn't real sure if that's something we should do, but we did reach out to council. They advised us to sign, and what we would be signing would be agreeing to the $3,000 that should have been treated as payroll moving forward, and stagecrafters specifically, those people that are working with our kids and that are not an independent contractor, which is specifically someone that is a professional in an area that they look to. That's their way of, it's the business that they're in. They may be a professional saxophone person, or maybe they come in just to do the set and then they leave. There's certain ones that we could potentially pay on purchase order, but these folks should not have been paid that way. Luckily, we're looking at $3,000 in just the Medicare portion and a slight federal income tax penalty. So it comes down to $99.16, which is a thankful amount of money. However, the agreement with the IRS is for eternity. So when I asked, is this just next year, 5, 10 years, for eternity? You have the stagecrafter, and she's specifically put that in writing. So we have this program, and we've gone over what was the program, who was involved in the program, what positions were involved, what is it, when, and we've gone back and forth and given her all the data. And there is also a 20-point factor test that the IRS advises you to always follow when you're hiring folks to make sure that we are doing this correctly. Just from some other colleagues and so forth, it's always best to assume they're an employee until you know that they're in such line of work that they would be self-employed or an LLC or whatever it is. That's the only time we're going to not put them on payroll. So this has been a good process for me. The lady from the IRS and I had great communication. I'm glad that we're to an end. However, so if you read through this, and basically it's just saying that's how we're gonna treat the employees. The fine would be $99.16. If we don't sign the contract, and we don't have to, it's an option. You can just rip it up and forget about it. We're gonna pay about $200. And then we would have no written documentation. We reached out with our representative with Russell and Andrus. They've given us the advice to proceed and sign said contract, that it's a better look for Tipp City Schools to acknowledge the correction made, acknowledge the audit, and know how we're going to be doing this moving forward. Because at first, I personally was like, do we want to sign this document with the IRS? Or how much money, you know, or do we just want to pay it and let it go away? But we've put a lot of time in it. It's become an issue. We've worked through the issues. We've made corrections, and I've learned a lot from it. And going along with what Russell and Andrews say, that we just tell the IRS, go ahead and prepare this. You know, so the steps would be that I call Miss Allison tomorrow and I tell her what we've discussed in our board session, which is what I told her we were going to do. Go over it, read through it, take action. Of course, not to sign anything this evening, but to then be provided with the official documentation, which is the numbers. Page 4, it does say sample at the top in your attachment. However, the data is accurate. Okay, this is just not the official form that we would be signing. Okay. Same with page 5. And those numbers are accurate. Now, she did explain to me if we did not sign the agreement, what typically, well, what is always by law is 2.9% of our gross wages is Medicare. We've always paid the 1.45 for staff, and then whether they have the pickup, you know, for certain folks, we would cover, or everyone else's. We pay 1.45, they pay 1.45. Ultimately, if we don't sign this agreement, everything kind of goes up to what it's supposed to be, and they change this other, and it's like double. So instead of a 1.74%, she's got us, they would recalculate the penalty. And
Okay,
however,
I think Mrs.
so
Fox.
have I explained it? I apologize. Okay.
So if, as a point of clarification, it's my, based on what you just indicated, is that the school district misclassified certain employees under the Stagecrafter program as independent contractors versus employees. As a result, we failed to pay $99 and certain cents related to their Medicare contribution. And the IRS has agreed to accept that as settlement for this misclassification, and with the exchange that we agreed to forever, you know, the rest of the days, treat Stagecrafters employees as employees versus independent contractors. If we don't, we have a higher penalty of roughly $200. Our attorneys that you've consulted with have suggested and advised that we agree to this and sign it. And your recommendation is that the board consider this for further action, I guess, at a later meeting when we have the one that's ready for approval. Is that correct?
Well, unfortunately, we have 1 week to sign this agreement. So tonight was to clarify the structure of the agreement, to give you a sample. I hope everyone understands it, you know,
Okay.
what we're doing here, and then to get informed this week that would be actually the signature.
Mr. Maines?
I recommend that we accept that and proceed in that manner.
I will go ahead and amend your motion to sort of join it, just to clarify. I move to approve the recommended action by Mrs. Fox this evening, and to authorize Mrs. Fox and Mr. Stefanik to sign and agree to an agreement as required to reflect that Stagecrafter employees will be treated as employees, not independent contractors going forward, and agreeing to an agreement that obligates the school district to pay the IRS the roughly $99.60 as reflected in the sample. So is there a second to that motion to amend?
I will second.
All right. And I guess it's not really an amendment, because you didn't get second, I interrupted you, but
Yeah,
we'll just go.
the original, there wasn't really a
Yeah.
motion.
So Any discussion on that? All right, hearing no discussion.
I just have
Go
one
ahead,
thing.
Mrs. Secor.
I think the historic backdrop to this is just really quick and important to make, and that is due to some diligence from board members, this kept getting addressed and pushed forward, needing to be addressed. Let me put it that way, that things didn't seem right the way they were being paid out. This needs to be addressed. So it was that due diligence. It comes from, the squeaky wheel. Sometimes you're annoying, but you do the right things in the long run, and that this is certainly reflective of that. Mrs. Dahl was very adamant about this. Mrs. Dunaway also had very strong feelings because they had the most history with all this. And they brought it forth. We addressed it. Mrs. Fox, thank you for working through with the IRS on this. And hopefully moving forward, this will never occur again. And we all learned and lived, and we're going to be better for it.
Anybody else have any discussion? All right, hearing none, Mrs. Fox, please call the vote.
Okay, just to clarify, we had a first motion by Richard Maines,
Yes.
or Simon was that?
Simon.
Simon and then
I-
Maines.
Simon, right.
I essentially interrupted Mr. Maines out of order, and he was kind enough to join me just to move us along.
Okay. Maines,
Yes.
Patry,
Yes,
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway.
Yes.
Secor.
Yes.
motion passes. Upcoming meetings, item 4A, Mr. Stefanik, I think there's some discussion here you'd like to present first.
Yes, the next regular meeting is scheduled for Monday, April 25th. We had a request from our AP government. Okay, I'm sorry, I want to make sure it was an AP US history, AP government.
Is government.
Our AP government teacher to ask if there was a chance to have the meeting at a bigger venue.
Oh, yeah.
One of the
Every year.
assignments for the class is for students to attend a government entity's meeting. So it could be the Board of Education, it could be City Council, and in a recent poll, we have in excess of 35 students, at least, that said that they would, like to attend the board meeting. So
That's low.
due to our seating arrangements here at the central office, we can't fit 35, 40, 45 students at a board meeting. So the request is if we could move that board meeting to the high school, and we'll work with the high school administration and Ms. Hagan and Mr. Bush to determine where we could have the meeting, where we could still stream it and have enough seats in the audience, so as many students as would like could attend the meeting.
I'll make a motion to change the regular meeting of April 25th, 2022 from the Board of Education to the Tipp City High School.
I'll second.
Any discussion? Mrs. Dunaway?
So we do this every year, FYI, the library works the best. The CPA, the audio is really bad because it's way too big. And one year we did it in the cafetorium, and that wasn't so great either. So they'll probably tell you that, but the library seems to have worked the best for layout, audio, and all that stuff. Yeah.
And I have seen the layout in the library when
Yeah.
they take some of the tables out,
They
they can
just- yeah,
fit quite a few
it's-
chairs in
It
there.
worked out the best.
Yes, okay.
Any other discussion? All right, hearing none, Mrs. Fox, if you could call the vote, please.
Yeah, I'm sorry that I'm just having to amend that item because I wasn't able to put action under that. Just give me just a minute. I apologize. So we have a motion to recommend the April 25th meeting to be held at
Tipp High School.
And did we specify the room then, or we're not sure yet?
High school is fine, and it's Mr. Patrick, Mr. Maines.
Patrick,
Yes.
Maines,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway,
Yes,
Zakor.
Yes,
Motion passes. Upcoming is the regular meeting Monday, April 25th, 2022 at 6 PM at the Tipp High School. Work session on Monday, May 9th, 2022 at 5 PM at the Board of Education. Stand a motion to adjourn.
I move.
Mrs. Zakor, is there a second?
Second.
Motion to adjourn the meeting. Any discussion? Hearing none, Mrs. Fox, if you can call the vote, please.
Zakor,
Yes.
Drum,
Yes.
Dunaway,
yes.
Maines.
I guess, yes.
All right. Patrick.
Yes. Motion passes. We are adjourned at 7:57 PM.
How is it that you're the member